this probably isn't relevant to the interview, but it's actually not my first time in the UK Jewish Film Festival. My sort of main occupation in life is directing, not documentaries, more children's TV, and I also occasionally act. And I actually was at the festival some years ago with a film that I had that I played a role in. So I obviously was sufficiently familiar with the film festival to be really hoping that I would be invited with my film and return once again, and this time as a director. And I was really, really excited about it. You know, I've done a whole bunch of festivals all over the world, and for me, this was definitely a peak. The first peak obviously was showing the film in Berlin, which had enormous significance for me,
Mm.
and was very interesting as well, because obviously showing it to a German audience rather than a British audience is a radically different experience. Not just the Q&A, where sort of different questions arise, but also the actual experience of sharing the film. I often, like in the festivals, that people say to me, you know, let's, while the film's on, let's step out for a drink. And I always say, if you don't mind, I really prefer to see the film. And not because I need to watch the film, but I enjoy watching the audience watching the film. And
Yeah.
every audience is different, responds differently. It's fascinating. So I was very, very excited to be honoured to attend the UK Jewish Film Festival. There's something very enthralling about coming to an established cinema. I mean, at the time when I was a kid, I think it was called the Screen on the Hill, but it's like a cinema that I know, and you know, sort of feeling like my film is being shown there just like any other film. Similarly, in Manchester, in the Cineworld in Didsbury, which was an amazing cinema in terms of sort of sound and picture quality. To be in a cinema like that also was again a first. I was really, really excited to attend, and as I say, Berlin was sort of the first peak amongst festivals. This was unquestionably the second. Coming back to my hometown, coming back to the place where I grew up, the country where I lived until I was 26 years old. That was very, very significant. Obviously, a lot of friends and family that were also able to attend, but I think perhaps the most significant thing of all for me was that Manuel, my dear friend, who has gone through this journey, literal and metaphorical, with me over the last 5.5 years, the fact that he was able to attend with his friends and family and participate in the Q&A, that for me was a hugely significant and phenomenal experience. And for that, I am indebted to the UK Jewish Film Festival, because otherwise it probably would never have happened. Every screening is different. Every audience is different. Every time the questions are different. I think what was particularly interesting for me in London was that there were a lot of people there who knew my dad and who knew me as a kid. And so that was actually radically different to any screening that I've done, because, you know, there were people there that either agreed or disagreed with the portrait that I painted of my father and of my relationship with him. So that was a very significant thing for me in London. In Manchester, it was less of an audience that knew me, but still an audience that I felt, you know, I have a lot in common with. I actually lived in Manchester for several years before I came to live in Israel, so that also was a bit of a homecoming for me. And I think it was probably an older audience, and many of whom had similar sort of stories. And that is one of the things that is consistent throughout all screenings, is the number of people who start to tell their stories, and the number of people who come up to me after the film and say, 'Seeing your film has inspired me to find out more about my parents and what they went through and my family, and you know, that's the kind of thing that I think for me as a filmmaker is so hugely gratifying, because you feel like, okay, so apart from providing an hour of thought-provoking entertainment, for want of a better word, it actually has had some impact. And if it has inspired people to go out and find out more about their family, or to set off on a journey of their own, then you know, that's for me is enormously gratifying. Um, the British audience respond differently to other audiences. You know, I think it's, you know, it's largely a sort of a cultural personality thing. You know, there are various moments of humor in the film. The British don't laugh out loud. It was very funny. I was sitting next to Gabriella, and I guess because she's American, she her responses were kind of different, and she was laughing in all the right places, and everyone else was completely silent. And I said to her after the film, "Thank you so much for laughing in the right places." You know, that's so. You know, that's just an observation, which is interesting. You know, I think sometimes people feel in a film that's dealing with sort of fairly heavy stuff, it's inappropriate to laugh, even if amusing things are happening. And I guess the British personality is such that you know, they're a little bit more refined, and so you know, would feel that it was inappropriate. So yeah, you know, like I say, every audience is different. Um, London and Manchester were very different to me. You know, being in the Cineplex in Didsbury, um, you know, I think that's a first for me, is being in like a multiplex cinema complex, with an enormous screen and an incredible sound system. So that again was a first and a fascinating experience. And you know, like I said, most of all, both London and Manchester have for me personal significance. I grew up in London. I lived in Manchester, so it was very much a homecoming, and it was that really gave it a very unique edge to me, the whole experience of the festival. Well, it's been just over a year that it's been doing the rounds. We kicked off October last year. It premiered. The world premiere was at the Haifa International Film Festival. Um, and then the first few months was doing sort of local screenings, cinematheques, and so on in Israel. Then, sort of towards the spring, we started doing the international circuit. And I actually had kind of thought that London was very appropriately going to be the swan song for the film. And amazingly enough, before I even have unpacked my suitcases, there's more festivals that have come up and that are inviting me. Some of them, one in particular, which it hasn't actually been publicized yet, so I can't unfortunately say what the festival is, but in the most surprising and obscure location in the world. So much so that as an Israeli, I can't actually go with my Israeli passport. I have to use my British passport to get there. So that perhaps gives you an idea of where I'm talking about, which again is just hugely flattering that a country that doesn't even have diplomatic relations with Israel is sufficiently interested in airing the film and hosting me and a Q&A. So it goes on. How long it'll go on for, I don't know. I'm absolutely, like I say, not just flattered, but thrilled by these opportunities. It is, making a documentary film can at times be an extremely punishing experience. And this whole experience of festivals for me is payback. It's pure enjoyment. It really is, and it's an honor. It's an honor to be able to share what is really a very, very personal film with such a wide audience all over the globe. So, as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. Thank you very much. I absolutely would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude. It is, you have been phenomenal hosts. and allowed me to have a really, really unique experience, and I am enormously grateful.